7TP, a Polish light tank of the 1930s. The main tank of the Polish army during World War II, used only during the invasion of Poland. The Polish version of the Vickers 6-ton, one of the most common tanks of the interwar period. It was developed based on the operation of 38 Vickers tanks in the Polish army, purchased in August 1931. The prototype was created in 1933, and serial production began at the Ursus factory in Warsaw in 1935 and ceased after the start of World War II in September 1939. On September 21, 1938, during the Sudeten crisis, the Polish government issued an ultimatum to Czechoslovakia regarding the return of the Teschen region. On September 30, 1938, Poland sent another ultimatum to the Czechoslovak government and simultaneously deployed army units into the Teschen region along with German troops. The 7TP tanks participated in the operation. By the beginning of World War II, the 7TP was the most combat-capable Polish tank. By September 1, 1939, 2 tank battalions of the Polish army were equipped with 7TP tanks, the 1st Light Tank Battalion, comprising 49 tanks, and the 2nd Light Tank Battalion, also comprising 49 tanks, which were part of the Prussians' army. On September 4, 1939, the 1st Tank Company of the Warsaw Defense Command was formed at the Tank Troops Training Center in the city of Modlin, consisting of 11 7TP tanks. Later, a 2nd Tank Company of the Warsaw Defense Command was formed from this type of tank, and both companies participated in the defense of Warsaw. The 7TP tanks participated in combat operations against German forces until September 26, 1939. On September 17, 1939, the personnel of the 2nd Light Tank Battalion crossed the border into Romania and were interned. On September 20, 1939, the 1st Light Tank Battalion surrendered, and on September 27, 1939, after the surrender of the Warsaw garrison, several 7TP tanks became German trophies. The tank is equipped with a 6-cylinder diesel-engined Saurer VBLD of Austrian manufacture, the installation of which led to a change in the shape of the hull above the engine compartment. The conical gun turret of the single-turret variant, with a mounted machine gun, was developed by the Swedish company Bofors. The Swedish 37mm Bofors WZ 37 gun installed on the tank was produced under license in Poland. A 7.92 mm CKM WZ.30 coaxial machine gun was used with the gun, or alternatively, 2 machine guns in the turrets on 7DW. Also, compared to the English model, changes were made to the observation devices. The tank was equipped with a tank periscope designed by Captain Rudolf Gunlack. Since 1938, tanks were produced with a rectangular niche in the rear part of the turret, which served for the installation of the N2C radio station. All 7TP tanks took part in combat operations during the defense of Poland during the German invasion of Poland in 1939. Most of them were assigned to 2 light tank battalions, the 1st and 2nd. The remaining tanks after the battles at the border and those gathered after the war began were assembled into an armored unit that fought in the defense of Warsaw. Until September 4, the 7TP tanks did not participate in the battle, remaining as a reserve for the command of the Prussia army. After the army reached its positions, its task was to hold the German forces at the Vistula. From September 4, the 1st Tank Battalion participated in local counterattacks, covering the retreating units of the Lodz army. However, after suffering heavy losses in the Battle of Głowiczo and retreating beyond the Vistula, the remnants of the tank units were assigned to the Warsaw Armored Motorized Brigade, and were completely destroyed in battles near Tomaszow Lubelski on September 20. German troops under the command of Gerd von Rundstedt, including the most prepared 1st and 4th Panzer divisions, reached Piotrkow Trybunalski by September 5 to 6, with the aim of exploiting the gap between the Lodz and Krakow armies, where they encountered a counterattack from the 19th Infantry Division of the Polish Army, reinforced by the 2nd Tank Battalion. The counterattack was unsuccessful, and Polish army forces received orders to retreat behind the Vistula River. In addition to the lost tanks, up to 24 vehicles were left without fuel during the retreat. The remnants of the battalion gathered in the forest near Andrespol on September 6 and then began to retreat to the northeast, losing tanks due to breakdowns and air attacks. Only 20 tanks reached Brest-on-the-Bug, where, after repairs, a separate tank company was formed. On September 15 and 16, the company fought with the Germans near Lodowa, and on September 17 received orders to move towards the Romanian border, but ended up at the Hungarian border. Upon crossing it, the tanks were left without fuel and spare parts. On September 8, the defense of Warsaw began. On September 12, a combined detachment of 7 TP tanks attacked the Germans in the Warsaw district of Okęcie. On the 13th and 14th, some 7 TPs were used in combined 1st and 2nd Tank Battalions. After September 17, almost all 7 TPs were destroyed or abandoned by the crews during retreat. From September 18 to 27, units of 7 TPs were used in encircled units. All tanks were destroyed or captured by the Germans after the battles. The captured tanks, about 20, were used in the French campaign, after which they were sent to Norway and to garrison units in Belarus and Ukraine. In the battles against the advancing Red Army from the east, there were practically no Polish armored units. All modern tanks were used in the western direction during the first weeks of the war. A few tanks were captured and used for testing. The 7 TP was a standard light tank of the interwar period, heavily localized in production. The tank was the only one produced in Poland and was one of the symbols of the Polish army in the pre-war era. In terms of combat characteristics, it represented a somewhat improved version of the original Vickers tank and was comparable to the Soviet T-26. It surpassed the German PZ, KPFW I and PZ, KPFW II in terms of armor and armament, especially due to the Swedish 37mm Bofors gun. The German PZ, KPFW III and Czechoslovak LTVZ 38 excelled the 7 TP in armor protection, maneuverability, and the number of crew members. However, even with this quality ratio, the 7 TP could not significantly influence the situation. By the beginning of the war, only 110 units were operational.